And the next presenter will be Alice Wu. Let's see if
Can
you're
everyone
on.
hear me?
Yes, okay, take it away.
Cool. So, I'm gonna take everyone out of TAVAP for a hot 15 minutes here. Um, my name is Alice Wu. I'm an undergraduate student from Santa Clara University, and I'm representing my undergraduate team from Santa Clara University, and this is our study, Building and Burning Fandom Libraries, Maintenance and Transnational Media Ecologies through English-Speaking Ensemble Stars fans. And So this is our roadmap for this presentation. It's going to be a little long, but this is just a little taste of what's going to happen. So without further ado, I'll give you guys a little background information on the game Ensemble Stars. So this is Ensemble Stars is a Japanese idol game franchise released by Chinese company Happy Elements KK in 2015. And then 2020, they had like a rebrand new version of the game, which is known as Ensemble Stars with two exclamation marks. So throughout the presentation, I will be distinguishing between those two eras. So, but the whole point of the game for both versions is you're supposed to collect idle boys, raise their stats, and read about
Alice,
them.
could you speak a little bit louder, please?
Sorry. Is this okay?
Yeah, this is a
Or
bit
go
better.
louder?
Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool. Yeah, so the game had no English version for more than 5 years, but we noticed that they had a large English-speaking fan base, and this is thanks to fan translation efforts. And we noticed that this is primarily done through like one of a big major infrastructure point, which is the English Ensemble Stars Wiki, which is basically a social and info hub for English players to learn more about the game and interact with other fans, and it has all the fan translated resources that you need, like game guides and stories, just to name a few. So, with all of these factors in mind, we've formulated this research question where we wanted to explore how might the interplay between fan created and official content shape a game's global presence, and then we also had two secondary research questions that we're planning to explore. And then now onto our related work. So in our study, we wanted to explore how these three foundational concepts came together, where we have fan labor, how fans consume and create media that result in new meanings, texts, and communities, and paratext, materials that supplement and influence how a main text is understood, and how all of these things play into media globalization, where how fan activities and products contribute to spreading the franchise globally, and the fan corporate conflicts in media authority and unpaid labor. Now, onto our methodology for our study. So, in our data collection, we collected 300 survey responses on Qualtrics from fans on X/Twitter. And then we conducted 15 interviews over Discord chat and email with active and inactive prominent fandom members, which included like fan translators, people who did work on that fan wiki that I mentioned. And then we also analyzed various media artifacts in the form of posts and chats from like X and Twitter, Discord, and other things like that. And now onto our findings. So we noticed that there are three major events that happened in our study that we wanted to focus on, and then we were going to orient our findings around these three periods, which is in 2021, there was a copyright takedown event that happened on the English speaking wiki, and then in 2022, there was a release of the English version of the game, and then in 2025, we had a major narrative event happen, and I'm gonna go into those while I talk about our findings so that nobody's like too confused about what I'm saying. So this is a quick roadmap of what I'm gonna talk about. So without further ado, let's go on to the early fan developments. So for early fan developments, we found out that a majority of the fans participating in the fan labor and creation of the fan works, including those translations that I mentioned, are not professionals. To put it simply, they're literally doing it for the love of the game. And they continue to do so and develop a deep passion for what they do by having community supported by them and that grounded opportunity to develop their skills and love for their characters and franchise. And then in COVID-19, we noticed that this played in a major part of developing this community because it gave many fans the opportunity to spend a lot of time contributing and interacting with the fandom. Because I'm sure, as many people know, during lockdown, like we couldn't go outside. We just had our laptops and we played a lot of games or like went online a lot. So this also contributed to a collective effort for many fans to not only develop a deeper love for the series and the game, but also contribute and build like all the fan connections and the resources, including the fan wiki. So then with all these factors, we noticed that the Ensemble Stars wiki became a common entry point for onboarding new fans, and it was just a general place for fans to congregate because of the sheer amount of resources and ease of access information. Like all the things that you needed to know about this game and like become a fan is all on that one website. And this is important because that like the game itself is very narrative focused. So the whole point of like getting into this game is to read the stories and know more about the characters. And if you played the game, since it's all in Japanese, like we also had fan like translated resources there. So if you had any questions or you didn't know how to navigate, there were specific pages for that. So players can easily learn everything they needed to know just by browsing this website. And with all of this in mind, this collective fan efforts of building and optimizing the wiki and the general traffic of people coming in to learn about this franchise onto the wiki cemented this wiki as an important pillar in the English speaking community, even till this day. And that's a bit ominous, I'm gonna say, because did I mention in 2021 something happened to the wiki? And this is where I talk about this wiki copyright takedown event. So all of a sudden in 2021, I mentioned that there's a lot of fan translated resources on this wiki. Well, turns out that it goes against the company's policy for copyright infringement. So the game developer sent just out of the blue to Fandom Wiki, which is where the wiki is hosted on, to tell them to delete all story translations and voice lines. So if you see on the screenshot on the left, it is like before like this takedown happened where if you wanted to read the chapters, you can click on the links. But now if you look at the right, that is what the wiki looks like now where there's nothing there. And this is the start of the burning library era, as we call it, where the start of corporate fan tensions over localization is observed. And so when this news broke out that they needed to take down all the translations, this was very stressful for everyone because, as reported by many of our interviewees that were part of this event, it was not a straightforward process at all because there was like a middleman involved. So the company didn't reach out to the fans themselves managing the wiki. It was through like another representative. So both sides were unclear on what to do. And then also there were like thousands of pages that needed to be taken down and edited. So there was a lot of craziness involved in that event. And then doing so with the news that spread out, there was a sense of widespread grief over the loss of translations because so much time, energy, and effort went down the drain essentially within a couple of weeks. And then a lot of people attributed that these fan translations and those involved in them were the greatest backbone for this community because that's what drew a lot of people in. And then some fans took actions by archiving those translations and then try to protect themselves, which I'll explain in a later slide. But essentially, all of this showed that a lot of these fans cared a lot about the translations and those involved in it. And then this takedown notice like made it known to fans that corporate is aware of their activities and it could go against copyright rules. So a lot of fans felt extremely worried about their safety and possible legal repercussions. So there was a lot of fans that decided to delete their content or leave the community altogether. And a lot of fans are wondering, okay, this they let the community do whatever they want for like a lot of years. What's going on? And that's when everything clicked in 2022 when an official English localization was released. So this is this is like a social media post explaining the official English release. And then here is screenshots of people finding out that, hey, there's an English release happening. What's going on? And originally this was all rumors and stuff like that. But then people suddenly started piecing together that, oh, maybe they strike the wiki to make sure that there's an English localization. And so, what does this have to do with our story, where in terms of globalization and everything? So, we noticed that there was a huge wave of fans that entered the English speaking fandom because of the English game, and this showed that there's a new gateway of entry. But this game is not perfect. I'm not gonna read the screenshot, but all I'm gonna say is I don't think this really reads proper English. And a lot of fans realize that, oh, these translations are bad. They don't make sense. And this is not good for the game because the game is very narrative focused. And the bad translations and localizations felt that the company did not care about their English audience. And so then the fans started comparing the official translations to their previous fan translations. And this made the fans feel even worse because theoretically a team of officials, like official localization team of professionals, could deliver a similar quality or even better localization than people just doing it for fun in their free time and without pay. And so this created a new pipeline of content consumption where you would get onboarded through the English game, find out there's a lot of information just waiting for you to look on the internet, and then slowly change your consumption patterns away from the official game to fan-made resources. So fans still rely on the official localization in the end because there might not be a fan translation out there since and they say it's better than nothing. However, it is more preferred that they rely on fan created resources as we observed. So what comes next? Now in 2025, we noticed that there was a major event that stirred the community altogether. And then so this will be the Kagetsu event. So this event it's a bit messy, but just a quick TLDR. So you see the picture on the left here. This is a Akatsuki, a Japanese inspired unit in the game, and they have persisted in this game since the very beginning. And then you'll see on the right side here, there's a new character in the group, and fans are not happy about this because they felt that since they added a new member all of a sudden through a narrative event called Kagetsu, like they're essentially changing what was already well established for 10 years. But then people also realize the background of this character. He is a minority, a Japanese minority. He's Okinawan. So for many English-speaking fans, noticing that, hey, maybe like this is not okay, they felt like corporate was promoting imperialism by putting like a minority character in a group that has a lot of ties to Japanese culture and Japanese imperialism because they had previously costumes that had like military uniforms and stuff like that. And this was a huge blow to the community because this event was so disturbing to many fans that they lost the motivation to create and continue their activities since the love for the franchise was not the same as before. And we established that previously many fans do their work out of love. With a huge portion of that love gone, they had no motivation to continue the activities. And then additionally, we observed that there was a different camp of fans that wanted to separate the characters and narrative setting from corporate actions. This implies that, you can be in a franchise, but you don't have to necessarily support the actions of corporate. And they did this by taking the characters and essentially rewriting them, like turning them into original characters to better fit their own narrative and needs. So, after all these events, what's happening? So, through our interviews and surveys, a lot of fans thought that corporate was being extremely like their actions were extremely weird and had terrible management. And there were arguments that perhaps the localization team was not properly supported because they pointed out that corporate spent a lot of money promoting the game in the West. And then this caused more distrust and more feelings that corporate did not have the best of interests in fans. And then there seems like their priority is to draw in more people rather than caring about their older fan base. And then ever since the copyright notice, fans felt that it would be better if activities and corporate involvement were separate because they felt like if fan activities were involved with corporate, it will be essentially messed up. So it would be better if they just did their own thing. And this could be seen through the modern day fan pipeline where if left undisturbed, like both channels will have activity and exist in this globalization trends that we observed. And then the fans are pretty keen on what's going on, where they know that corporate seems to be aware of their moves and believe from the very beginning they knew about like the English fan base before the localization, and they felt like the localization was essentially piggybacking from their established community networks. So essentially, fans think that the networks did a great deal for corporate, and that's why there is an English localization that happened in the first place. Now, for a conclusion, we notice that fans and corporate have various motivations and stakes in their franchise, and this affects their interactions, backlash, and expectations, but they're all linked to looking for, like, their personal motivations and stake in their franchise and the perceived output of everyone else involved in their activities. So essentially, they all rely on each other, and that's how they continue to build upon each other, is what we notice. And for future work, we think that this matters because, all games have a fan base, and it is good for us to understand that about these fandom structures and their interactions. And I feel like there isn't a lot of like emphasis placed on fans in this context. So this is why we wanted to do this study. And then for our further research, like hopefully we'll see similar trends or like trends challenging this in other communities, maybe in Genshin, maybe in places not related to game studies. And so, yeah, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you from my team. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And this is my contact information. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We have about 3 minutes left for questions. There is a question here, but I see someone new. Ryan.
Yeah, I was just wondering. It's a bit of a broad question, but I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit more about the sort of difference between the sort of translation versus localization and how that relates to the sort of fan response. Because in a lot of what I've seen sometimes with this sort of stuff, particularly in regards to sort of other games, the fans that are doing this are often coming from sometimes a very reactionary perspective, and that's not the sort of impression I got from what you were talking about here. So I'd be curious if you could sort of expand about a little bit what makes this sort of situation unique.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to unpack in this situation, but the two primary things that make this unique from like, different fandoms from what we observed is one, like, these translations like happened first, and I think that plays a huge part in this localization story because this was the fan translations was essentially what the fans only had from the very beginning. And then I believe that like because of that, we also seen from like their reactions of the translations getting taken down that like the fans just like develop like some sort of like attachment to these translations. And then in terms of quality too, like they also like that also plays a huge portion of like this attachment to the and reliance on the fan translations. So that's one. And then the second thing is that hold on. Um okay, I lost my train of thought there, but like I believe that okay, you know what? Like I'm so sorry. I lost my train
It's
of
fine.
thought
It's
there.
fine. Don't worry.
We have a bit more time, but I see another new person.
Hello, Alice. Thank you for the
Hello.
presentation. I was wondering a little bit, how realistic do you see a world where the fan translations would have turned into the official one, being monetarized, being their labor turned into actual money for them, payment for them?
Yes, okay, I can expand on that a little more. So, in our study, we also the people we interviewed, like the fan translators, some of them did, use their fan translation experience to go into industry, is what we've been told. However, I don't think that it is like from what they've expressed to us, I don't think is entirely realistic that they want to do it like a full-time partnership. Maybe like some commission work from here and there, but it seems like with the added pressures of like deadlines and like that sort of things that often comes into like the life cycle of developing a game, especially a narrative focused one, is probably very unattractive for these fans because the biggest reason why they're doing it is ultimately for themselves and for the community and doing it as a way to like distress, learn more about themselves and like what this franchise means about them. So, and then they also expressed that like they don't want like their activities to be involved with corporate.
Thank you so much, Alice. That's all the time we have for questions. One more round of applause, please.